Okay, good afternoon, students. Am I audible?
Good
Yes,
afternoon.
ma'am, you're audible.
Okay,
I'm
so yesterday's lecture we discussed about human viruses. So we'll quickly for 10 minutes revise what we did in that. My first question is for Devanshi. Devanshi, can you tell me what is the variolation and why for what this technique was practiced? Variolation. Quickly, I want answer quickly. Nehal, Devanshi, are you saying?
Ma'am, it's a
Ma'am, this technique
process.
was used to
No, no,
provide
no, no,
vaccine.
no, no. I'll ask. You will not speak like that. No,
Okay, okay.
right. I asked Devanshi. Devanshi, you did not answer. I will go to Nehal. Nehal, yes.
Ma'am, it's a
Switch on
method.
your camera.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, it's a method of immunizing the patient against the smallpox.
Yes. And where this was, in which countries this technique was used?
Ma'am, I don't remember the country.
But this was technique. Okay. Yes, Nehal. Okay, this was Nehal speaking, right? So can we have an answer from Ayushi that in which countries this technique was practiced?
Ma'am, China.
China. Okay. So next question is my next question is to Ishita. Ishita, can you tell me what was the contribution of Edward Jenner? No. Sanjana, next this question passes on to you. What is the contribution of
Ma'am,
Edward
am
Jenner?
I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Ma'am,
Please switch on your camera also.
okay, ma'am. Ma'am, am I visible?
Okay, fine. You're not
Uh,
visible, but yes, it's fine. You can go on.
yes, ma'am. Ma'am, Edward Jenner, basically, ma'am, he was the one who introduced the vaccine for the smallpox.
Yes, he introduced the vaccine for the smallpox. Sam, can you tell me his experiment? How he did it actually?
Yes, ma'am. Am I visible?
Yes.
So
Yeah, you're audible
basically,
and you are visible. Yes, you're visible.
Edward Jenner noticed that the milkmaids who suffered from cowpox were immune to smallpox. So what he did is took the pustule of a cowpox and introduced into a child of 8 years old, and that developed antibodies, as both cowpox and smallpox had similar mechanism. So the
Yes.
child also immune to smallpox.
Yes, fine. Good, Sam. My next question is for Athoiba. Athoiba, can you tell me when did India became free from polio? In which year? Athoiba, please switch on your camera and unmute yourself. I want everyone to participate in the class, right? Athoiba, Athoiba, you are even there in the class or not? I don't know.
Hello,
Yes, Athoiba. Yes, I can hear you. Yes, tell me in which year India was polio free?
ma'am. I think 2011.
Okay, you are near to that, not 2011. Uh, question passes on to this question passes on to Shakti.
Ma'am, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Please switch on your camera.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Shakti, I cannot hear you. Yes.
So it was March 2014.
Yes, Shakti, can you just tell me how this was made possible? I mean, how this was made possible in India? I mean, we are free from polio. How this was made possible?
So it was basically from vaccination.
Yes.
continuous vaccination was done then to
Yes.
make India free from polio.
Yes, yes. The continuous vaccination program was being done in support with the WHO, due to which India was declared polio free in the year 2014, right? So we discussed this also in the last class. So can you just okay, let me ask you. Tridev, can you name few diseases which are eradicated due to the vaccination? I mean, they are still present maybe in tits and bits, but usually they are eradicated. We don't see those diseases now, and because of vaccination, they are not now. Yes, Radev.
Yes, ma'am. Uh,
Yes, Radev.
One is polio itself,
Yeah, polio first.
and one is smallpox, which is also eradicated.
Smallpox is eradicated, and there's a rubella, there's a chicken pox, and they are seen somewhere where people are not vaccinated, but usually they are like vaccinated, eradicated, right?
Yes.
So for when we talk about the therapeutics in the viral diseases, in human viral diseases, we always talk about the vaccines. Yes, please, all of you mute yourself. So we always talk about the vaccines. That means vaccination is a very important part for eradication or the management of any kind of a viral disease, right? So today we are going to study about, there is another topic, we are just going through the, we are going in module 1, we are going stepwise, right? So the next topic in module 1 was about what is the basic difference between viral, fungal or bacterial pathogen. So we have already discussed about the viral pathogen, and we all, yes, we know about the fungal and viral pathogen, but I thought let me compile in one PPT and let us see that how these three pathogens are similar and how these three pathogens are different. What are their symptoms, what are the diseases caused, what is their management practices, how we are dealing with these kind of a pathogens, right? So in this lecture we are going to discuss about the three major pathogens of humans, plants and animals. Yes. uh, I'm not talking about the aquatic, I'm not talking about the other things, because they are present everywhere, they're affecting every kind of living person, right? So to start with the bacteria, yes, we all, you have studied, by this time you have studied the micro 1. I'm not sure if you have studied the micro 2 or not, but micro 1, yes, you have studied. So you know a lot about bacteria. I don't want to discuss about much about bacteria, but yes, we know they are prokaryote, they are the very small, they are the simplest and the most ancient cells with free floating genetic material, right? These single celled organisms, they have number of shapes, they have a bacillus, they have a spherical, they are micrococci, they are like rod like, so they also comes in a different kind of a shapes. So there are two kinds of a bacteria. We all know that there's a gram negative bacteria and a gram positive bacteria, which we can identify through the gram staining procedure. The key difference, the major difference, is the presence of extra outer membrane. Yes, Rupal, you want to ask something?
No, ma'am. Actually, ma'am, I can't see the content. That's
You
why
cannot
I.
see the content. Okay. Others, can you see the contents? Please let me
No,
know.
no, ma'am, we can't see the content.
Ma'am, I can see it.
Ma'am, I
I,
can see the slide
I
one.
don't know why this is happening. Guys, those who cannot see, quickly leave and join again. Quickly, quickly. I'm waiting.
Yes, ma'am, now it's visible.
Yeah, sometimes see, when you don't see the content, just try to leave the meeting and join again. It is fine. I understand, right? You don't need to every time ask me. And then also, if several attempts you don't see, then you can just message me and you can tell me, right? No problem, right? So we were talking about the gram positive and gram negative bacteria. We have studied a very wide course on this bacteria and how we study these bacteria. So yes, in this lecture, we just revision of that basically. So the presence, there is a presence of extra outer membrane in a gram negative bacteria, and this is an extra line of defense that makes it harder for antibiotic to penetrate, thus making gram negative bacteria more difficult to kill, and they are more prone to developing resistance, right? Then bacteria, they are abundant in soil, they are in the root system, they provide services, they are good and bad bacteria, we all know that. They are nitrogen fixing bacteria, which provide nitrogen, which fixes the atmospheric nitrogen and provides them to the plant. plant, root nodules, right? And there are certain good bacteria such as Pseudomonas and other which act as a biological agent to kill other kind of pathogens also. So they are used as a biological control also. So we are not saying that all the bacteria are harmful. Some bacteria are useful also. Yes. So thermophilic, there are heat-loving bacteria. They fix sulfur to produce sulfide and energy for photosynthesis in aquatic sediments or organically rich water. So these are the some positive points. But here we are not to discuss about the positive point. Then there are number of bacteria are in our body, right? So bacterial infections which are caused by bacteria have killed well over half of all the humans who have ever lived on the earth. So there were a lot of epidemic or a pandemic or a plague-like situations which are caused by bacteria, and number of deaths are reported in such cases. Bacterial infections started pandemics such as bubonic plague, which is estimated to have killed 50 to 60% of population of Europe during the Black Death in the 14th century. So which was one of its largest, that so many number of people were affected by these kind of bacterial pathogens. We know bacteria, they multiply or reproduce by binary fission, replicating their DNA. So we are not going to discuss, and because of they have a very short generation time, so which allow mutations also to emerge and accumulate rapidly, and it causes changes in the bacteria, right? They also changes with time, or they become resistant to antibiotic. Antibiotic resistance is the major problem which is being faced these days, and when we go to the doctor and doctor prescribe us some kind of an antibiotic, and then we again after like 2 days we go back and say it's not working. Then they do this antibiotic resistance test, and they when you check the list of that test, then you see the most of the bacteria they have developed and resistance to maximum antibiotics which are available. So it becomes very difficult to manage these bacteria, and we need to find out maybe the other ways for managing these bacteria, or to look out for the more newer antibiotics so that we can use them, right? So this is also one major problem that we are all are facing these days. Then viruses, yes, from the last week we are studying viruses. We know they are ultra microscopic. We know they are very small. They replicate in the living host. Their genome is DNA and RNA, or their size could be from like very small. 200 nanometer is a very small. So we need to see, we use the micro electron microscope to see them, right? So sizes they have like cylindrical shapes. They are filamentous particles. They are isometric particles. So they come in different kind of the shapes also. Sometimes they are enveloped. We say that sometimes viruses are enveloped. So they have a layer of lipid or a fat, which the SARS-CoV-2 is also enveloped virus. So they can be more readily, or that's why they say you need to constantly wash your hands, because soap disrupts this outer envelope, right? So that's how it kills the viruses. So viruses cannot reproduce on its own, we know, unlike bacteria, and so they are not considered living. So next lecture we are going to study about the origin of viruses. So there are three main hypotheses which are given for the origin of the viruses, and I mean, we cannot at this moment say that which one fits the most. All seems to be fitting the, like when we see the reason, they all seems to be very appropriate. But when we talk about the other reasons why they are not, they cannot be, real. So we have enough argument against that also. So next lecture we are going to study about the origin of the viruses, that how they originate. So there's a lot of discussions and lot of argument and lot of and I mean, people are not going for one particular hypothesis for the origin of the virus. Every hypothesis has its own drawback, right? So viruses cannot reproduce on its own. They are not living. They need some kind of a living. They can survive on the surfaces. Basically, they're not surviving. They are there. They are not multiplying on the surfaces. So their particles, they are there for some time and lot of time. So if during that time they get a proper host, infection can take place. So we cannot say that they are multiplying or they are replicating on the surfaces. No, they are not. They need a living cells to be able to multiply or reproduce. So definitely they rob off the host machinery. They don't have anything of their own, so they go to the host, uses host machinery, and make new virus particles. They cause diseases we have discussed in detail. Lot of flu influenza like diseases. They are Ebola, there are Zika, there is a rotavirus, there is a rabies virus, there is a HIV virus, there is a hepatitis virus. Number of huge, the list is enormous and a huge, right? Then host range, yes, the host range of viruses could vary. Even in the plant also, there are certain viruses which are affecting the perennial plants, such as Prunus necrotic ring spot virus is affecting most of the stone fruits. So we will not see the Prunus necrotic ring spot virus in the vegetables, right? It is not found in the vegetables. So we can say that it has a selective host range. There are certain viruses, for example, cucumber mosaic virus, which is found everywhere. But again, cucumber mosaic virus is found in the vegetables, it is found in the ornamentals, but again, it is not found in the stone fruit. It is not being identified. So there is certain kind of a, selection of the host range also, the host also, that which host, which virus is preferring or which virus is infecting. It's not that the all kind of viruses are affecting all kind of the host. It is not there, right? Then viruses have also evolved to jump into the humans. We know there are many viruses, like they cause bird flu or a swine flu, which originated in birds and a pig, and then they managed to infect the humans also. Again, the SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19, they say they jumped into the humans from the bat. There's not a short uh, proof for this, but the studies which are available till now signifies this, right? Then we know about the host life cycle of a virus. It enters the virus, it replication of the viral genome, it produces the new viral protein, and then it gets released from the host cell. And then this is how it will go and infect the new cells. So it keeps on multiplying and replicating, right? So this is the differences between virus and bacteria. Still we say that viruses are not living organism because they don't have a homeostasis. They don't changes, yeah, for functions, different kind of functions like a human body or living body perform. They don't have that kind of a thing. Bacteria, we say a living, they multiply, they do such kind of a thing. So we can say bacteria are a living. Viruses only grow on reproduce in time, the living host. Bacteria needs a nutrient, they need a media to grow. So even they are growing on a rock also, they are growing on the wood also, they are growing in the lab on the artificial nutrient media also. They can grow anywhere, right? Viruses are submicroscopic. That means you cannot see the viruses through the normal compound or a simple microscope, whereas bacterial cells can be seen through the normal compound or a normal simple microscope. For viruses we need to have an electron microscope, right? Bacteria are bigger as compared to the viruses, right? So viral infection is systemic. Viruses infect a host cell and then multiply into number of copies and leaving the host cell and infecting other cells of the body. Bacterial infection is usually confined to the part of the body, and they describe as a localized infection. Infection may be caused by the bacteria or by the toxins that bacteria produced. So systemic diseases caused by viral infections are influenza, measles, polio, AIDS, and COVID-19. Bacterial diseases are pneumonia, tuberculosis, tetanus, food poisoning. There are a number of bacterial diseases which are being reported. So again, they have many things in common. For example, both are pathogens. Definitely both are infecting humans, and both kind of pathogens can be spread by coughing and sneezing. Both bacterial infections can also, and viral infection, contact with infected people. And there are many sexually transmitted diseases which are caused by both viruses and bacteria as well. Both can be transmitted by contact with contaminated surfaces, food and water, contact with infected creatures, maybe pets, livestock, insects, fleas, and ticks. So these are the common thing that both have. Microbes, they can cause acute infections, they can cause acute infections which are short lived, chronic maybe weeks, month, or a lifetime infections, latent infections which may not cause symptoms but can be reactive over a period of a time or a month, they can cause some diseases. And most importantly, bacterial viral infection cause mild, moderate, and severe diseases. So they are being classified into both or all types of diseases. They can cause mild symptoms, severe, and other diseases. Then this is just the example how many people have died due to the bacterial infections or a viral infections. Bubonic plague, we have just discussed the Black Death by Yersinia pestis, the bacteria, smallpox, which is caused by the bacteria, this smallpox virus. Then we know the Spanish pandemic, 1918 to 1919, again killed a lot of people. Then HIV's ongoing epidemic, we can say, again, 2019, they killed, 33 million people throughout the world they are talking about, right? So yes, these viruses are still affecting number of people, and COVID novel coronavirus pandemic, which has killed around 3 million people as of April 2021. So it is still ongoing. The world is still under a pandemic. We all are under a pandemic. We are still facing a pandemic. We cannot still say that it is stopped or when it is going to be stopped. So we are still, that is why we are being asked to take precautions. That is why again and again we see the advertisement that be careful, cover yourself, don't go out if it is not required. Even if you are vaccinated, still, because new strains are being identified in the coronavirus, so we still need to be very careful. Again, these are the symptoms we have already discussed: coughing, inflammation, vomiting, diarrhea, fatigue. There's a difference. Bacterial and viral infections are dissimilar in aspects. For example, uh, how they respond to the medications. Bacteria we can manage by use of the antibiotics and other medicines, whereas viruses cannot be. So they both are too small to be seen with microscopy, but then bacteria, relatively complex single cell structure, they have a cell wall, thin membrane, reproduce on your own. Fossilized record shows that bacteria have existed for about 3.5 billion years. They can survive in different temperatures. Viruses, they do not form fossils, but yes, those mummies or those kind of a older, mostly from the mummies, it has been discovered and identified that yes, there are some kind of a symptoms which shows that they were virus infected. The largest viruses, the largest of the viruses are smaller than the smallest of the bacteria. This is just one thing, that just for the comparison, that how small they are. They have a protein coat, DNA, RNA, whereas unlike bacteria, viruses cannot survive without host. Again, this is the reproduction and other things. And certain viruses attack cells in the liver, respiratory, blood. Viruses attack bacteria also, right? They can make bacteria also sick. Diagnosis of bacterial and viral infection, it's simple. You go to the doctor, they prescribe some tests, and the diagnosis can be done. There are certain blood tests or other things. In certain cases, the biopsy is required to check certain kind of infection. Treatment, the discovery of antibiotic was bliss to treat the bacterial infection, one of the major breakthrough in the history of the medicine. But then bacteria are smart, there's always a survival of the fittest. They always try to evolve. Everyone do that, right? When you want to survive in a particular environment, you change yourself according to the environment. So similarly, bacteria are also doing that, and the overuse of antibiotics has made many of them resistant to the antibiotics also. This has created very serious problems. It has become very difficult to manage the simple infections also sometimes, right? And what happens when your body is affected by certain kind of the pathogens, your immune system becomes weak, and you attract more other pathogens. So your body becomes prone to other kind of pathogens also. So if you are affected by a virus, you are very vulnerable at that time. Your immune system is not good. So there are chances that other bacteria or other kind of pathogens can infect you. And then the syndrome effect, that the combined effect of both pathogens, bacteria and virus, is usually very not very good, and it becomes more difficult to manage those kind of a syndrome diseases or diseases. Antibiotics are not effective against viruses, but sometimes, yes, I told you that they are being recommended just to in case you get infected by certain bacteria, because you are already infected by virus, your immune system is weak. So just to prevent that kind of infection or infection by other pathogen, the doctors, they recommend this. Okay, vaccines have been developed. We know that, we have discussed this yesterday also. So for viruses, the only thing that we have is the vaccination. Some diseases is herpes simplex virus, HIV, influenza. Antiviral medications are available, but the use of antiviral medications has been associated with the development of drug-resistant microbes. So we need to be very careful what kind of a drugs that we need to recommend, and how the cocktail of a drug is recommended in case of HIV patients. That how you, so that the we are able to manage the pathogen by use of combination of a different kind of a drugs. Now the third kind of a major pathogen is fungi. We know fungal infection is very common in humans and animals, and even in the plants also. A lot of losses are caused by the fungal diseases. Many pathogenic fungi, they are parasitic in humans and they cause diseases. Mostly they cause skin diseases, they enter through the wound in the skin, human body, and such wound may be the insect punctures or any cuts, right? So one of the example that fungus causes disease in humans is Claviceps purpurea, which the cause of ergotism also, a disease that was prevalent in northern Europe in Middle Ages, particularly in the region of high rye bread consumption. So that rye was infected by this pathogen, and which caused disease in humans also. Other human disease is athlete's foot or aspergillosis, or the yeast candida also cause number of diseases in human. Then number of fungal diseases, but there are fungal medicines, or some antibiotics are available for fungal diseases also. Some ointments, mostly the skin diseases which are caused by fungus, we get some kind of antifungal ointments in the form of ointments, so they are available. Then there are number of fungal diseases in the plants. If we talk about the losses caused by the fungal disease in plants, it's lot of losses which are being caused, and the visible losses. I told you in virus infection, there's one problem, that the losses which are caused by the viruses, in some cases they are not very visible. We don't even know sometimes that the plant is infected by the virus, and there's not much change in the yield or the quantity or quality of the crop. But in case of the fungal infection, the changes are visible. The food, for example, apple scab is caused by the fungus. It caused the epidemic like situation in the orchards in Himachal in the certain maybe 1960s or 70s, that time, right? So there were visible spots on the fruits, and those fruits were not fit for the consumption. So you need to, you cannot, you just need to discard that yield basically. So that is the major losses that you get in term of quantity and quality, and in term of economic losses also. So that is how fungal diseases they affect. Then there are a number of diseases. When we talk about the plant diseases, there are rust, there is a blister, there are scabs, there are spots, leaf spots also. So number of diseases are there. There are Pythium species which causes disease in vegetables. Then there are Fusarium wilts also, which are being caused by the fungus in the plants, peas. There are rust, a number of rust. There is a black rust, there is a yellow rust, there is a brown rust, number of rust, types of a rust. Puccinia, this is the Puccinia, and number of Puccinia species, they affect that. Then they affect the rotting of the plants also. There's a collar rot in the peas, there's a root rot in the beans which is being caused by this, there's a gummy stem blight Alternaria leaf spot. There are certain fungi such as Alternaria, such as Septoria, such as Cercospora, which causes the spot diseases in the plants, right? Leaf spots basically. The ring spot. There's a blights. Potato blight caused by Phytophthora infestans. It caused a famine-like situation or epidemic. It was a major Irish famine. You must have heard of a Irish famine, which was caused by the Phytophthora infestant in potato, and the whole potato crop was destroyed due to the this pathogen. And it was one of the biggest famine in the history, which is being noted due to the fungal infection. So blight diseases, then Cercospora leaf spot, Septoria, there's a leaf blight. So number of diseases. I'm not saying that you remember everything, but you should at least know 5 fungal diseases, 5 bacterial diseases, both human, animal, and 5 to 6 viral diseases, definitely more, both human and plant. So causal organisms and diseases, you should remember them. It is important, right? Go for it, don't just leave them. Then the management of the bacterial diseases, serious infections can be treated with antibiotics, which work by disrupting the bacterium's metabolic process, though antibiotic resistance is there. Then immunization is available to prevent many important bacterial diseases such as Haemophilus influenza, type B, tetanus, and a whooping cough. We all get that in our childhood. Then management of a plant bacterial diseases. So there are certain chemicals which are available. Applications of copper containing compounds or a Bordeaux mixtures are there. There are certain antibiotics also. We can do antibiotic spray in the plant also, such as streptomycin. They kill or suppress the plant pathogenic bacteria and they prevent the spread of the, but it is very costly treatment. If we use the antibiotics for the spraying in the plant, it becomes very costly for a farmer to bear the cost basically. So it is not usually recommended. Then antibiotics are used to treat diseases caused by the vesicular bacteria, phytoplasmas, and other kind of a plant pathogens also. Phytoplasmas are also plant pathogens, which not in large number, but yes, there are certain phytoplasmas which are being discovered and they cause certain losses. Then tetracycline must be injected into mature tree on a routine therapeutic schedule. So this is a costly procedure which usually farmers will not go for, right? Then applications made during early stage of infections are more effective. So it is useful how you apply. Then biological control. So whenever we talk about the management, the biological control is important. So and that means antagonistic or biological products are available. There are certain kind of insect pests which are available, which kills other insect or which control the certain kind of a bacteria, or there are certain kind of a biocontrol agents such as Pseudomonas, Trichoderma viride and Hergianum, which prevent the growth of other pathogens, bacteria or a fungi. So they can be used as a biocontrol agents. Then management of a fungal disease, antifungal medications are available. And the next thing that doctor recommend is the good sanitation and personal hygiene. So usually fungus, where does fungus grow? It's very, when the place is very damp and a lot of moisture is there. So when the sunlight is not there, you spend a lot of time indoors. So there are chances that we might get the fungal infection. So the first thing that doctor tell us is to clean yourself, keep yourself clean. Don't remain. It's a rainy season, then don't your skin should not be that moist. It should be dry and clean to prevent the spread of the fungus. So this is how it is being controlled. And when we talk about management of a plant fungal diseases, there are a lot of, see, we need to manage these diseases because they are destroying our food crops. I told you this thing earlier also, that why we need to manage plant diseases, because they are causing losses. The 40% of the yield which can go to the mouth of some people is being destroyed due to the pathogens. So definitely we need to do something, because we are spending so much on the agriculture. A farmer is spending so much for the fertilizations, for other techniques. It's not very cheap. You use tractors or other means there in the, so you farmers are spending their money, or they are investing there, right? So if their yield is being affected by the pathogen, so definitely they are not getting the money that they should get. So that is why we need to look for the management of the diseases. And these days, one approach which is being followed for any kind of a plant pathogen is integrated disease management. Integrated disease management. So integrated means whatever techniques commonly is available with someone, so those all techniques are combined together to manage a particular disease. I'll tell you why this is there and why we are going for an integrated disease management approach. Because chemical control, use of fungicides, use of weedicides, and lot of chemicals in the field is affecting human health, right? These fungicides, they contain certain kind of a compounds where they are not washed off. When we wash those fruits or vegetables, they are not washed off, they stay there. Even if after 10 washes also, they go inside us. And after certain time, their the use pesticide use, there's certain part of the India, people are affected, lot of people are suffering from the cancer. Why? Because of the maximum use of the pesticide in the field, or insecticide or fungicide. And these kind of a chemicals have a residual problem. Once they are in the system, they are there in the system always. For example, I'll tell you, someone is using, spraying a pesticide in the field, or a fungicide or insecticide. Some after the rain, some are washed off and they are getting into the streams. Those streams are being used for water by different birds and different animals. From there, they are going to those birds and animals also. And after a certain time, their amount increases. It is with humans also same. We are consuming this, we wash these vegetables, but still they are still there. We are consuming them, and these pesticides, insecticides have been discovered in the uh, mother's milk also. So can you see how far they have reached from our body to mother's milk? That means from mother's milk it is going to the child also. So this is a very serious, why these people are going for organic farming. This is the reason, because people want to get away from the diseases. And these days, what these growers are doing, see, I don't blame them, because at the end they have to earn their living from them. So they grow a separate lot, they grow a separate field in for the selling purpose, and for their own purposes they grow the vegetables and or crops in a small field, where they'll not use any kind of a insecticide, pesticide, or a fungicide. Only those where they are selling, they go, because they have also understood this, that they are getting infected, or they are getting lot of disease, skin diseases, lot of cancers are coming out because of the heavy use of these kind of chemicals. So from there, the concept of organic farming has emerged. These days you go to the market, you see lot of products, these are organic, these are. So what does that mean? That means there is no chemical, or no artificial chemical has been used in those plants basically. So those are costly, because definitely to save your crops from the pathogen, it is a very difficult task. It is very difficult that without using any fungicides or a insecticide, you are raising a particular plant and then you're selling it. You need to use some other means for that. So that is why it is being recommended. Integrated disease management approach is just to avoid the chemical. I mean, in this, the chemical use is recommended only towards the end. When other methods are not working and they're failing, then you say, okay, you go for a chemical control. Otherwise, if you can manage by using cultural practices or a biological control, or by just changing the your growing pattern in the field, maybe before the arrival of the pathogen, or maybe late in the season when that pathogen is not there. Crop rotation in the field, that this season you grow this crop, so that pathogen is there. So next season you grow another crop जो उसका host ना हो pathogen का. So there are smaller practices which are being referred to the farmers, that you follow these kind of practices, so you will be able to save your crops. This is how integrated disease management approach is always used in the management of the plant pathogens. Cultural practices are like soil, you cover the soil with the plastic sheet. So what happened? There's a the greenhouse effect will be there due to the heavy heat in that. The whatever microbes or pathogens are there, they'll get killed. Right? You cover it with the plastic, lot of heat will be trapped in that. That will kill your lot of pathogens in there. So that is a chemical free method to manage a particular pathogen. Or treating your seeds or other planting material with a little hot water, maybe 50 degree or 30, which is which can affect the pathogen or an insect or a pest, but not the plant. So though any technique which does not involve the use of the chemicals are being preferred and are being recommended to the farmers also. These days also these are being recommended, so that less of chemicals we consume. So this is why it is recommended that when we get vegetables or fruits from the market, we should dip them in water, for a warm water, for a longer time, so that they become, or we should avoid consuming peels, because most of the pesticides, they'll be in the peel of the particular vegetable or a fruit. So it is recommended that you just peel off, you don't eat whole things as such. So this is why management is important. But then in management also we need to see what kind of a for virus management. I've told you earlier also, I'm not mentioned here, that once viruses are in the field, they cannot be managed. So we need to be careful. We need to use clean seeds, we need to use clean planting material, we need to manage the vector, we need to remove the weed plant. So whatever possibility, or virus resistant plant if are available, we should go for that. So whatever all other possibilities which can prevent the infection, or when we just, so that when our plant is growing in the field, initially it is infection free. Yes, in later stages vectors can come and they can transmit the virus, but it will be too late. The impact of that pathogen will be reduced then. लेकिन अगर पहले से ही आप क्रॉप कुछ लगा रहे हो which is already infected by a particular virus, so definitely उसके losses ज़्यादा होंगे as compared to which is virus free. So that is why main emphasis is on the certified planting material or the seeds, prevention of the vectors, avoiding vectors by using certain methods. For example, white flies, या फिर some kind of a pathogens, these flies are attracted to yellow traps. So sticky yellow traps are being placed in the field at various places. So they just go, and flies, they go and stick there, right? They are attracted towards the bright colors. So this is the easiest and economic and chemical free method to control flies or those smaller agents or smaller vectors we can manage at that time. So this is how we can go for the management, right? So that's all for my today's lecture. If there is anything which you need to ask, if there is anything which you don't understand, you please, I can repeat as many times as you want. You can stop me in between also, that you know, because this is, I'm going very slow, because I know this is a very new topic to you all, and you need certain time to understand these things. So that is why there is lot of repetition, and there is lot of things which are being repeated. Like management, I've told you 10 times. Symptoms, I've told you 10 times. So I believe that so many times I'm telling you one particular things that retains you. You guys will be able to retain that particular thing for a long time, because for a new topic or a new subject, it takes time to understand things, right? But that's why I'm going very slow, and I'm making my language very simple so that you can understand. I'm trying my level best, but still if you feel that you are not understanding, you can just please let me know, and we can see some other method to do that, right? So that's all for today's lecture. If there's any questions, please go on. Okay, there's no question. Fine, good. So switch on your cameras for attendance, all of you. So
I
that,
had a question.
yes, who's this?
Ma'am, Yuvraj.
Yes, Yuvraj, go on.
Ma'am, why the bacterial infection is less at the initial stage
Why
and it
is
becomes
the
more effective? Why the bacterial infection is less
why the
effective in
bacteria?
initial stages?
You're talking about humans or plants?
Plants, ma'am.
Plants. See what happens. Initial stages, the see, for any case of pathogen, the initial stages the infection is less, because they have not multiplied to that amount, or initial stages the fruiting is not there, like plant is also young, the fruiting is not there. So by the time the fruiting will be there, there are chances that bacterial infection has come down to level has come down to they have the level of the bacteria has reduced to a certain level, right? So at the initial stages also they have not, the number of bacteria or the multiplication rate is not so fast. So that is why at the initial stages it is less, and then it definitely increases at the later stages. And one more thing I'll tell you, in a plant there is a particular age, right? We always say that younger plants are affected more as compared to the older plants. So if that particular stage is escaped, we sometimes recommend that you change the pattern of your sowing, you change the date of sowing. So those time is it changed, or it is we save the plant from that stage, so there are chances that the losses will be less at the later stages. So this is how we assume, and this is how we prevent the pathogen infection, or we prevent the losses which can be caused by a particular bacterial infection or other pathogens in the plant, by just by escaping that particular stage. Younger plants are more susceptible, more affected as compared to the older plant. Older plants, there could be many reasons, right? आपके मेटाबोलाइट्स होते हैं, आपके एंटीऑक्सीडेंट्स होते हैं, सर्टन केमिकल्स होते हैं, ड्यू टू विच वायरसेस और अदर पैथोजेंस कैन नॉट अफेक्ट दैट पर्टिकुलर स्टेज. सो दिस इज हाउ इट गोज ऑन, राइट?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, fine. So can we switch on the cameras for attendance, please? Adhish?
Present, ma'am.
Athoiba?
Present, ma'am.
Ayushi?
Present, ma'am.
Sam?
Present, ma'am.
Devanshi? Switch on your camera, students. देवांशी अपना कैमरा वो सब ठीक करवा लो, तुम रोज रोज नहीं मैं सुनूंगी तुम्हारे ये प्रॉब्लम, right? Get it correct, because maybe after one module we'll have assessment, and in that I'll need your camera. Ishita?
Present, ma'am.
Janvi? Kshitij?
Present, ma'am.
Manaswani? Yes, Manaswani, I can see.
Present.
Namrita?
Present, ma'am.
नम्रता के बाद कौन है? नंदिनी? नेहल? रूपल?
Present, ma'am.
रूपल?
Present,
Yes,
ma'am.
Rupal, I can see. Sahiba?
Present, ma'am.
Sanjana?
Present, ma'am.
Shakti?
Present, ma'am.
शिवानी?
Present, ma'am.
शिवानी के बाद कौन है? तन्वी?
Present, ma'am.
त्रिदेव?
Present, ma'am.
विवेक? युक्ता?
Present, ma'am.
युवराज?
Present, ma'am.
Okay, so you all have your NTCC presentation today?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay, all the best, do well.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, bachcho, I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you so much.